Welcome to Direction Northeast. Hello, I'm Chris Mitchell. This program is a presentation of the Mass Communications Department of Northeast State Community College and is produced by the students through the college's video production facilities. This edition of Direction Northeast is about Appalachia. Though it sounds like a geographic region, it's more of a poetic state of mind. In just a moment, Direction Northeast talks with poet Frank X. Walker.
Northeast State's a wonderful place to start your career in college, and the campus is beautiful, the teachers are one-on-one.
It was an excellent decision to come to Northeast State. I've learned so much coming here.
I love the school, and everyone is friendly here. This has been the best time of my life. I have really enjoyed being here.
I think if it hadn't have been for Northeast, then I wouldn't feel as happy and as driven if I chose another school.
Step by step, Northeast State is here to get you there. Enroll now at northeaststate.edu.
Mr. Walker is responsible for coining the term Appalachia to represent the African American voice in the Appalachian region. He graduated from the University of Kentucky and completed his MFA in writing at Spalding University. A founding member of the Appalachian Poets, he is the editor and publisher of Pluck, the new journal of Appalachian art and culture. Mr. Walker, welcome to Direction Northeast.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Oh, no problem. Well, first, let me get you to define the term Appalachia for us.
I can't add much more to that definition. If you look at the dictionary, it's going to say African Americans who live or work in the region known as Appalachia. I think that the writing group I'm part of has even broadened that definition to include people who claim their African American heritage. One of our members is actually Puerto Rican, but he's part of the writing group, the Afro-Latin Poets. But there are a lot of people in the region who've never felt comfortable or felt included, under the term Appalachian, that readily embrace Afro-Latin as part of their identity.
So, in the region, how has support been for the Afro-Latin?
Well, I think in the beginning it was slow, but now in 2011 we are celebrating 20 years as a writing group, and 20 years of that word being used and passed around. In those 20 years, it's made it into a dictionary, so it's officially a word now, and we're proud and excited about that. Almost all the poets and original founders of the group are all publishing, and most of us are university professors now, so it's become a part of our own reality, and I think the degree to which we publish and get invited around the region kind of represents the rate of acceptance, and it's grown steadily, and it still continues to increase.
How many people were, in the initial phases of starting this?
In the beginning, there was a handful, maybe 5 or 6 the first 3 or 4 months, and then it grew. After a year, we had about a dozen. It grew to over 25 at its height. And a lot of those original members, moved away from the University of Kentucky and went to other parts of the world. Some of us stayed in the region or returned. And today we have probably 22 to 24 active members.
So you say this started at the University of Kentucky, correct? Is that is the origin?
That is ground central for the birth of the Afro-Latin Poets. In fact, the university at our 10th anniversary put up a plaque by the elevator we used to use to have our sneak away poetry moments. When we first started writing, we were meeting in the evenings, on Monday evenings from 6 to 8 p.m. But if we wanted to have a poem to share during the week, we would go to the Student Center, go into the elevator, and cut the power off, and have this private moment sharing poetry. We couldn't be interrupted, and it became, kind of a secret ritual for us. It was almost like having your own bat cave. And then once the word got out, people knew about it, and the university eventually acknowledged it and gave us our own plaque by that elevator.
Well, let me ask you this. What inspired you to start writing in the first place?
I don't know that anything inspired me to start writing. I think that my writing is a natural extension from being in love with books. When I was a kid, I was a bookworm. My first memorable aspiration was I really believed I wanted to grow up to drive the bookmobile. And this huge blue and white van that came to our neighborhood, once a week with books. And that was heaven for me. And I think that love for books never went away. And eventually I recognized that the things I was looking for in books wasn't always available. So eventually it made sense to be proactive about it and maybe contribute my own work. And I didn't know how to do that in the beginning, but I was lucky to come across really good teachers. I had a really great high school teacher who really turned me on to creative writing. I wrote my first short story and my first form poems in the 9th grade in high school. My first publishing opportunity happened during high school. And I don't think I took it as serious as most people do when they plan a career. I just thought it was something fun to do and something that everybody could do. And eventually, as a college student, I decided to change my major and actually focus on becoming a really good writer, which took many years. I'm still working on that now.
When did you first feel like a writer?
I think the first time I felt like a writer was being at the press when my first book came down the assembly line, and I could see the cover, which has it's an old black and white photo of my parents. And on the spine, it had my name across the middle. And I think something about that moment just made it magical. It made it real. Before that, I thought of myself as I was a writer. At that point, I became an author. That magic moment just kind of sealed it for me.
Right. Well, we've gone back to what started you writing. What is your history, your personal history? And obviously that plays an influence in your writing. Does that play a big influence in your writing, or?
Well, in as much as I write about, I write about social justice issues. I write about family, identity, and place. And a lot of that feeds my work because when I think about how people respond to the region, outside the region, I remember being in Oregon and having an individual ask me on a college campus if there were other black people in Kentucky. And I was shocked by that question. And then I eventually came to understand that they had never been to Kentucky. And everything they knew about Kentucky was in the box that included Next of Kin, Deliverance, Little Abner, Dukes of Hazzard, Beverly Hillbillies, all these negative stereotypes and caricatures. And the thing about those caricatures is they never include people of color, even in that box. As negative as the box is, it's even more negative to make a group of people invisible. So for me, that part of me that's an activist decided to start adding material to my work that would answer those questions. So I wrote a poem called Kentuck that was in direct response to that question. And given the response that people had, I recognized that, maybe nobody else was doing that, so that part of me that recognized that poetry could also be an opportunity to exhibit a level of activism and to make a statement, to answer questions, just kind of took over. So when I'm not writing about history and family and identity and place, I readily take on those opportunities to make a statement, to try to answer those hard questions.
How would you describe an Afro-Lachen poem?
I think that what would make a poem Afro-Lachen as opposed to Appalachian, I think it would have some connection to a set of Africanisms that exist, in American culture. And those Africanisms include, reverence for and respect for ancestors, respect for nature, call and response, this kind of transformational power of community that happens. A number of things that are culturally recognizable that shows up in film and video and books and literature and performance, but people may not recognize as being connected to Africa. It's part of what we brought to the continent. It's part of our culture. So those Africanisms make them African and American. The fact that they happen in Appalachia makes them Afro-Lachen.
Well, what problems have you faced in establishing this new genre of poetry?
Well, I wouldn't say I've faced any problems because I didn't set out to establish a new genre. That was never my goal. I was simply trying to write. I felt like that's what writers do. You write. I was not the person who said that, a movement is afoot. It was somebody else. It was a group of critics who recognized that, there was now this very active group of poets of color who were adding, really valuable work, credible work, to the literature of the region. And the region before that had defined its literature pretty much as being 99% white. Maybe Cherokees snuck in there sometime. But the other writers who were from the region already, even before my writing group, were never connected to the region. You know, people didn't think about Effie Waller-Smith, who was writing during the Harlem Renaissance and lived in eastern Kentucky. People don't connect Nina Simone, Roberta Flack, Carter G. Woodson, Booker T. Washington to Appalachia. And in fact, they are part of that region, so they're Afro-Latin. And for me, that makes it easier to claim those as Afro-Latin ancestors, and it makes more sense for people who try to figure out where Appalachia connects to. And we're not disconnected to our history. You know, we're part of this legacy of great writers and great artists and thinkers who existed before we were even born.
Do you think that that legacy is continuing on in the younger generation?
Well, absolutely yes. You know, I say that because I'm a teacher, and you know, I'm teaching courses that deal with Afro-Latin literature. You know, I'm teaching a course that didn't exist 10 years ago, and I'm working on a textbook with other writers that might be the definitive textbook to be used with other Afro-Latin literature courses. So now that that material has been respected in the academy, you know, I see that moving forward and continuing now that it's been blessed by the academy.
Now, you mentioned Nina Simone and Roberta Flack and Booker T. Washington, and kids today, you know, their heroes are Jay-Z, Kanye. Do you think this is the right direction? Do you think they uphold that legacy?
Well, you know, I think you know, I can't choose people's directions, you know, but you know, I hope that whoever they respect and treasure, that at some point they will investigate what they respect. And I imagine if you took Jay-Z and set him down and asked him, you know, who his musical heroes were, that he would create a list that would include some Afro-Latins. Even if the young people don't know Bill Withers and Nina Simone, they might recognize the music when they heard it. You know, there are a lot of Bill Withers lyrics and music that's been sampled in today's hip hop, and kids just don't recognize it because they never heard the first version. So it's already there. They just don't even, they haven't had the proper education yet.
So, in what manner do you think that we can foster or promote, you know, this type of poetry in the new generation?
Well, I don't think it's a different type of poetry. I think that what we can do is promote room for it in the culture and in the academy. I think there should be coursework and a curriculum that allows the work to be part of the experience for students coming through, that when they study literature, that it includes literature from the region. You know, a lot of young people get through a college experience and never have to write their own poetry. I think that should be part of the process. Everybody should try their hand at creative writing and find their own voice. And I think that creative opportunity will create a level of kinship that may not have existed before.